it's time. Ready? Good evening, everyone. It is Wednesday, April 9th, 2025, and we are adjourning a Board of Education regular meeting for Cuyahoga Heights Schools. Will the treasurer please call the roll?
Mr. Dobbins.
Here.
Mrs. Etter.
Here.
Ms. Prouse.
Here.
Mrs. Decker.
Here.
Mr. Suchaki.
Here. Motion passes 5-0. At this point, I'll move for approval of agenda, please. Do you have a motion?
Do you want to do the welcome?
Oh, I need to state the welcome. I'm sorry, I jumped over that. Too anxious to move on tonight, I guess. On behalf of the board, I would like to welcome student, staff, parents, and interested community members to tonight's Board of Education meeting. The board values and encourages public comment on education issues, and anyone having an interest in the actions of the board may participate during that Board of the meeting. And if so, please sign in. A copy of the board meeting agenda is available to review on the website, and we do ask that cell phones be silenced during the meeting. At this point, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, now we can move to section 2, and I'll accept a motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Dobbins and...
I'll second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, treasurer, please call the roll.
Mr. Dobbins.
Aye.
Ms. Prouse.
Aye.
Mrs. Etter.
Aye.
Mrs. Decker.
Aye.
Mr. Suchaki.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. We have no comments from the public, so moving right into section 4, treasurer's business.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for items 4A, 5A through 5D for approval tonight.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion for those items, please.
So moved?
Moved by Ms. Decker,
Second?
second by Mr. Dobbins. Any discussion?
Yep, just wanted to point out a few things. 5A, new vendors. We just have 3 tonight, and on our lead sheet, they would just be either musicians or a sound technician for the musical. All are being paid under $500 estimated amount from the general fund for the 3 individuals for that. And the musical was Wizard of Oz?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, outstanding. Outstanding.
We actually had a dog, right? Yeah.
Real dog ate a lot of biscuits, I
Yeah.
think.
Let's see, 5B, purchase orders over 5,000. We just have 3 tonight. The first one is Martin Public Seating. That's for elementary school cafeteria tables, 16 in total, for a cost from the general fund of $35,584 and change. George, you were the contact. Did you want to talk about that one?
Yeah, so the elementary tables are over 20-some years old. There's some pinch hazards, the seats aren't attached, so we're kind of modeling what's already in the high school, middle school, over to elementary school. It will also help us to accommodate a whole other grade level of students in the lunchroom at the same time, so.
Yeah.
All overdue purchase.
Yeah, we're going to be, there's a conference/teachers lounge there. We're going to be moving that wall back. Get to do a small abatement, opening up more space for those tables so we can accommodate 3 grade levels. Knowing that next year we are going to have a breakfast program at the elementary school, as we deferred for a year. We had received notification that we either needed to offer breakfast at the elementary school or notify families that we would not feed children free of charge when we qualified for it. That's tough logistically, so that project, which is not a huge expenditure, plus these tables allow us to accommodate both a breakfast and a lunch program and 3 grade levels at one time, as opposed to 2.
Another part too, like in the budget, as far as that being budgeted for the district, the high school, middle school, Mr. Dutray wasn't using his money, so we kind of shifted that over to the elementary for this year, so we made that purchase. So it's kind of being smart about working together with the building principals. If there's a big project in one building, and we get to put off 1 year, we're going to get kind of help both sides out to do things that are needed for kids.
Thank you, Mr. Dutray. That's a good idea.
Yep. Number 2 is Houghton Mifflin Hardcore. That's for grades 9 and 10 English Language Arts curriculum adoption. From the general fund, $43,342 and change. Matt, did you want to talk on that one?
Yeah, this aligns with our middle school curriculum that we've had for the last 4 years, into literature by Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. It has some diagnostic assessments that allow us to determine which students are not on grade level, 6 through what would be 10 now. We've been spending between $5,000 to $9,000 a year on single-year licenses for English. So this is a 5-year license. The nice part is that if anything were to change with curriculum in Ohio, the digital platform changes along with the law. So it's not like you've purchased a book that you're stuck with now for 5 years. That online platform and the accompanying workbooks will adjust should any changes happen with curriculum at the state level.
And the last one is Dean's Greenhouse. This is for the class of 2026 plant sale fundraiser. It's paid from the 200 level fund, class of 2026, $13,000. And that's just where they purchase flowers and plants and then sell them at a profit to generate funds that they have.
So that's a new vendor this year? Didn't we use somebody else?
No, we've been using Dean's Greenhouse for a number of years.
Oh, okay. Okay. Just didn't recognize the name. Thanks.
5C is an annual resolution asked by the Budget Commission. So what the Budget Commission does is they will send over to us for us to authorize the tax rates. So please have the board adopt the tax rates for your school district and email the signed tax rate resolution to our office by May 2nd, 2025. So we're ahead of the game. Again, this is coming down from the Ohio Department of Taxation through the Budget Commission. And the item that we see has the dates input. And again, the Budget Commission's the one that creates this document. They have our school district, Cuyahoga Heights. And then on the next page, we'll see our actual levies. So we have all of them here inside, outside, and then our permanent improvement. This is going to be the general fund. And I'll go back to our main screen, which has everything totaled up on it. And we can see that the total is going to be 4.1, 39.6. And for our inside millage, that hasn't changed. It's 4.1. And then what makes up the 39.6 that we just saw would be the 1 for the PI levy that was just voted on back in 2024, March. And then all of our voted on outside millage, plus our new levy from March as well. And those two amounts make up our 39.6. Now, interesting, we're going to be talking about the new law. The proposed law that's being coming through the House right now at the moment. And it's this item from the Budget Commission that could be affected. So this is where we're saying to the Budget Commission that, yes, we're effectively saying we're authorizing the Budget Commission to collect on these tax levies that we have, that have been voted. The outside mills, the inside mills are the ones that the Constitution gives all school districts in the state. So this generates revenue for our school district going into the future years that we have. And we do this annually, year by year. But we'll see how that's affected by that proposed law that we have coming up. And donations, we had one donation with our thank you letter, and this was for Mr. Fred Holsworth, who's the CEO of STEC, and he had donated 4 guitars to us that we have. Matt, did you want to talk about?
Yeah, we're really grateful for this donation. He and his wife came that day, donated 2 guitars that they want allocated to the middle school, high school, and then 2 to the elementary school. He talked about the importance of music to creativity, to intelligence, to just peace of mind even. And if he could open up, that curiosity for just 1 student or 4 students, they wanted to make sure that they did that because they're so impressed with our school districts as they send their kids here through the tuition program. They would even mention that they would love to move to other locations in the state of Ohio, but they are so, they believe so much in the quality of the education here for their own children that they're going to hold off on their personal plans so that their kids can go to school here all the way through. So they've got a 6th grader and then 2 4th graders. So they're going to be here for a while, but they really felt compelled to give back in some way, and this contribution of music allows them to reach one kid one note at a time and hopefully spark some type of magic or desire within them. So we can't thank them enough for the donation.
We took a nice picture, and that'll be put in the,
Yeah, it was in a newsletter last week. If you look at Reaching New Heights, you can, a gift of music inspiring the next generation of musicians. That was the title. Where words fail, music speaks.
Oh, very nice. And I just want to thank whoever wrote this very, very nicely written thank you note on our behalf, because it was really nicely written.
Right.
And shows their donation was so generous, and that we have appreciation for that as well.
yeah, Tracy Deal and Matt's office does a fantastic job.
So thank you very much.
running those.
Nice.
Those are the items I have for approval for tonight.
Okay, any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, Treasurer, please call the roll.
Mrs. Deca,
Aye.
Mr. Dobbins,
Aye.
Mrs. Etter,
Aye.
Ms. Prowse,
Aye.
Mr. Souchaki.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Moving on to the treasurer's discussion and comments, section 7.
Yep, just had 3 items tonight. First one would be the May 2025 five-year forecast. We talked about this at the last meeting, but just rolling this over. So during our May 14th, 2025 board meeting, we would do a work session review of the forecast and approval all in that night. 7B, good news. We were awarded the Auditor of State award this past year for fiscal '24. So the Auditor of State is presented, the award is presented annually to local governments and school districts upon completion of a financial audit. In order to qualify, entities must meet specific criteria for a clean audit report. I want to recognize Kathy Martin, Assistant Treasurer, and Elixir Rodriguez, Payroll and Human Resources Specialist, for their outstanding work in the Treasurer's Office. This recognition by the Auditor of State's Office for Cuyahoga Heights Schools represents outstanding teamwork. The staff, administration, and Board of Education all had a hand in working together to achieve this award. So we received 2 awards. So the email that we got from Katie over at the Auditor of State's Office, Katie Simo, who's the Northeast Regional Liaison, said that we officially were awarded for fiscal '24 the Auditor of State Award for our clean audit, which is fantastic. And then the other award that we had received is the highest achievement in open and transparent government for fiscal '24. So we had received this for a number of years, the 4-star award. So both for our last audit, so great news that we have.
Congratulations from all of us.
Thank you to
Well done.
you.
To yourself and your staff.
Yeah.
Yep, great for our school, so. And we invited Katie to come out for a picture like we normally do, so we can have it, taken right there with the backdrop. So just keep rolling those over. The next item is going to be our discussion on the impact of the proposed 25%. Now it could be adjusted to 30%.
It is
carryover balance.
30 as of yesterday afternoon.
Yeah, Matt, do you want to set this up while we kind of start looking at our attachments?
Yeah, so on April 1st, there was a press conference held by leaders of the House of Representatives to present a substitute House Bill 96. We know it as the budget bill because that's what affects us the most, are the funding pieces. And a lot of things came out of the messaging, but one of the things, we got an email that came through that highlighted very specific things, and one of them was that, and they say it didn't come out of left field, but it hit me out of left field for sure. It says, no change carries a greater impact than the provision that would automatically reduce the millage rates of a district with a cash balance of greater than 25%, which has now been changed to 30%. We were told because of the efforts of so much outreach, and as you know, Mr. Muccio sent an email to the House of Representative members, their aides, and the Senate, and their aides, the board members, the news. I contacted the House of Representatives and their aides, 185 of those individuals at the same time, and I think that was going on maybe around the state that got the House to move that to 30%. Doesn't make any better for us. And essentially, so that 30%, so that the reductions equal the difference between the district's current cash balance and what it would be at 25%. And what they had sent out was a simulation based on fiscal year '24, and he's going to show that showed that that the average in the state was around 45% cash carryover balance of current year's cash balance divided by the expenditures for the year. We're at 97.8%, one of the highest in the state, not the highest, but among the highest in the state. And essentially, when this first came out, this was equivalent to about a $12.5 million loss, immediate loss of funds by the school district that would be given to the county budget commission and then returned in some form back to your tax base. Keep in mind, in Cuyahoga Heights, 74% of the tax base are businesses. 26% are residents. And that money would go out and would not be able to come back. And that's what we received last Tuesday. Sent him the email. He was in my office within 5 minutes. We were on the phone with Alliance High Quality Education almost immediately. And I've been in several legal updates since then. And we're going to talk about the impact of that. And again, to set it up, we're still receiving funds from the state for next year and the following year. So we are still receiving state funds to the tune of approximately $909,000 next year and $998,000 the following year. But this is a completely different thing. So don't confuse this with what Mr. Mucci was going to talk about with the Fair School Funding Model, which they had said they are not going to follow. They have a bridge formula that they're using, and there will be a completely different funding mechanism in 2 years. So whatever we're doing now is going away, and we don't know what that looks like on the other side of that. But he's going to talk about this, which is probably, we've been told it's the most significant change to funding in a generation, at least since 9/20, which was 50 years ago. And it could have devastating effects on school districts across Ohio. Everybody's going to be affected. So, you want to go ahead?
Yep.
Sorry, you said
No,
set
no,
it up.
this-
I set
no,
it up.
This is fantastic.
This is part of my discussion too, so we're going to,
Yep. We're both doubling up
yeah,
on this.
taking it on here.
But yeah, Matt's exactly right. So this came out, and we're a member of the Alliance for High Quality. So they essentially advocate on behalf of approximately 100, 150 school districts in the state of Ohio. So they came out and said, this is taking place. The House is proposing a cap, and we have it highlighted here. They unveiled it maybe 2 weeks ago.
It was last week.
Yep.
Yeah.
Perhaps no change, as Matt was reading, carries a greater impact than the provision that would automatically reduce the millage rates of a district with a cash balance greater than 25%, now 30, so that the deduction equals the difference between the district's current cash balance and what would be at 25%. So keep in mind that what they're saying is the ending cash balance in the 5-year forecast is capped, cannot go higher than 30%. And we're going to show what ours is and kind of what that represents. It says that the House's goal here appears to be twofold: provide direct and immediate tax relief to property owners at no cost to the state, and reduce the historically high cash balance amounts to what the House argues to be an acceptable 25% level that they have. So the House is trying to provide immediate tax relief on the backs of school districts in the state.
They feel that school districts have a windfall of cash that we are hoarding from the general public. We are treating it as a rainy day fund and use it whenever we feel like it, which is absolutely not true. We get no benefits from inflation or higher appraisals with past levies. 9/20 has fixed the amount we can collect there. And what they're seeing is, and you barely see it there at the bottom of this page he's showing, if you take the fiscal year 24 numbers and you look at districts above 25% threshold, that totals $5.1 billion. So they believe school districts have a windfall of $5.1 billion that should be returned to the tax base, businesses and residents, without understanding exactly why those reserves exist. All right, we are being effectively, some districts like us, effectively disciplined for having
Being good stewards of our money.
fiscally responsible plans voted upon, taxpayers voted for that, and you're now going to undo a vote to return that back. And I don't know how that's constitutional, but that's what we're talking about. Go ahead.
Yeah, Matt's exactly right. So down at the very bottom, as he was saying, 526 districts, which represents 86% of the state, have a cash balance greater than 25%. Then they talk about that totals $5.1 billion. So if we go to the second attachment that we have in here, it's going to be an Excel spreadsheet sorted by Cuyahoga County. And we have filters built into this too, so we can play around with the whole state if we wanted to see that right here. But we're just looking at our county, Cuyahoga, and we go down here. This is the total for the whole state. That's the $5.1 billion that they're talking about that potentially would be returned. So if I were to uncheck Cuyahoga and check all the other counties, so Ashland, Ashtabula, all the others, we'd see the amount that makes up that 5.1. But we'll just stick it here to Cuyahoga. And we have it sorted by cash balance as a percent of expenditures for fiscal '24. So let's take a look at ours. So our cash balance, and if we were to look at our 5-year forecast at the same time, we can see where these amounts come in. And I wanted to pull it up so everybody could have an idea. So if we search our Cuyahoga Heights 5-year forecast and ODE's portal, we go to fiscal '25, we click generate. So the first figure that we want to see in our 5-year forecast, right, that we have, is going to be, if we go to Excel, we want to see our cash balance and the total expenditures. And the cash balance is going to be on line 7.020. It's going to be the $17.342,438. So if we go to the 5-year forecast and we look at 7.2, this is that figure right here. It's very small, but that's our 17.3 million. So what that represents is our cash balance at that point in time in fiscal '24. The other number that they have in this simulation is total expenditures in fiscal '24. So that's $17,768,633. And this is on line 5.050 of the 5-year forecast. So if we go to 5.050, that is this number, 17.7 million that we have. So the simulation is looking at prior year, and they're saying our cash balance as a percent of expenditures is almost 98%, almost 100%, and we're third in Cuyahoga County, behind Warrensville Heights and Fairview Park, and then Brooklyn and Strongsville are below us. But to me, this means we have a very strong 5-year forecast and financial outlook. By comparison, the schools that are under, let's do 30%. And we have Maple Heights is at 30.8, but Bedford, Olmsted Falls, Richmond Heights, Garfield Heights, and Cleveland. And let's look at Garfield Heights' 5-year forecast, just, to take a look. And again, our bottom numbers are all in the black that we have. So if we go back to looking at Garfield Heights, and again, what we want to do is we're saying that the state is basically going to take everybody's 5-year forecast and now have it operate under that 30%. Garfield Heights, I'll click there, fiscal '25. Let's click on their first submission. So this is from March of '25. And again, Garfield Heights, going back to our list, they have a cash balance carry, 21.3%, right? Going back here. And what do we see at the very bottom of their 5-year forecast? Deficits in the red. And this is even with the proposed levy that they have. So their deficits are actually quite larger. So what it means is we won't be able to operate with a high cash balance and allow the school to have a solid financial outlook in the 5-year forecast. We will all be put, all the school districts, now forced with a cap, you know, a ceiling on us that we have to operate at 30% or below. So we're all going to be looking at forecasts that are unfavorable by this legislation that they're doing.
And Mr. Wicker, I thought that there was, like, if you are showing a deficit in your 5-year forecast, isn't there something that happens?
Yes. And actually what came out today or yesterday, I think late yesterday.
Yesterday.
The state, the House is proposing to do away with the 5-year forecast. So they're going to change it from the 5-year forecast to the 3-year forecast.
So that you don't show a deficit because of this new,
Yeah, and then in turn,
Partially.
yeah, the Ohio State and the Ohio Department of Education, you know, is notified because they analyze 5-year forecasts. And if you have a deficit within the first, 3 years, they identify those schools, come out, and, you have to correct that. By chopping the 2 years off in the House's proposal, it shrinks everything. And I don't know what that does as far as notifying the Ohio State's office or the Ohio Department of Education to come out. But for us, and we were playing with our 5-year forecast and throwing numbers in it, what it means is, yeah, and I don't have it up, but don't worry, we're effectively losing $10 million approximately, from our budget. Now, there's gonna be different simulations, and I'll show one more thing and pass this over to Matt. This is the text that we had. So it's just one page, and you could fit it all in on a text message. It's gonna be a long text message, but that's what this looks like. So it's, as Matt was saying, it's one of the most consequential school budget proposals in the past 50 years, not since HB 920 in the 70s. And the text that we were just looking at, you could fit it almost in a text message from what we were sent. And we don't know all the details, and it keeps changing. But in my eyes, if you are looking to adjust something because of high property values, you need to spend a lot of time analyzing a year. You have to have study groups and impact groups to see all of the proposed changes that could be affected. Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that students aren't being impacted by this. You don't want students to lose any type of curriculum, especially for schools that are planning for all that in advance. And they want to make sure that those art classes, music classes exist for that. And I feel that we've had a good plan. We're doing great things here. And for the state to cap what we're doing, which not only affects curriculum, but also capital improvements as we're moving down the line, and everything else that we have. The general fund is the whole, pot of gold, the whole kit and caboodle that you have. So,
Yeah, so this is,
So can I ask real quick?
yeah, go ahead.
What percentage of our income is property tax? Because I know some districts get more from the state, we don't get as much from the state.
Yeah.
So if we're giving money back, how are we gonna cover 17 million in expenditures?
it's,
I'll show you.
Are they taking into account like where the school gets most of their money from? Like we're mostly,
They-
what, property tax?
No, they're not.
Right?
Yeah, they're not.
yeah, this is gonna,
It's a one-size-fits-all.
right, they're coming not with a scalpel, but a sledgehammer.
But what the state gives us is not enough to
Right.
sustain.
We know we're bottom 5 in state aid, bottom 10,
Right.
bottom 5. Effectively, what's going to happen is the state's going to virtually say in that tax resolution we looked at earlier tonight, that the tax rates that the voters had passed to carry Cuyahoga Heights schools into the future, we can't collect on those rightfully passed levies. We can only collect up to a 30% carryover by the math, formula that the House, is coming out with. And we will not be able to receive property tax revenue potentially next year, as soon as that. So it's gonna affect us, and it will drain the money in our bank accounts. So that means we're gonna have to worry about cash flow to make payroll. We're gonna lose the revenue that we get from our investment income, and we were looking at the second year of making $1 million on those investments. And again, it's not hoarding cash per se, but it's planning out how you effectively manage over the course of so many years all those expenditures that you have. And we know our tax rate's one of the lowest among all of the schools in Cuyahoga County. And we have to, I was telling Matt, I made a call to our Red Tree investment team, and we've diversified our investment portfolio, so not all of our cash is held in CDs, for example, but we have cash in Star Ohio, which it's liquid. You could turn it, into our operating account within 24 hours. But we have, a good amount of cash. We have about 20 million sitting in Star Ohio, about 5 million sitting in Red Tree. Of that 5 million, that's invested in CDs that could be 3 years. And you don't want to break CDs, but the state's giving us no advanced knowledge of saying, hey, this is going to come down in a year, 3 years. Work on your investments so you don't lose money by redeeming CDs. And these are only just some of the, items that are coming up. There's a lot more impact to this as we're talking with other schools, as we're looking at it, amongst ourselves. And, we knew within minutes after reading this the impact it's going to have. And other treasurers and superintendents are, encountering the same issue. I believe we're going to sit down with another school district in the next day or so and just work on simulations about what this impact has. We've been in contact with, our organizations, Northeast Ohio, ESC, as well as the Alliance for High Quality. So everybody's kind of on the same page of what this impact looks like. And I know, Matt, you were going to.
Yeah, this is our current 5-year forecast, and they were running simulations on fiscal '24. What we don't know is what fiscal year they're going to plug into if this becomes law as is. So we're kind of giving you the worst case scenario as of today, hoping it only gets better from here. Okay, so understand that this is the worst case scenario. Because the conversation has been, well, why don't we just start moving money to like permanent improvement? And they're already way steps ahead of us. They're playing short games and long games, the state legislator is and they've already anticipated this, and so it wouldn't surprise me if they would base, even off of fiscal '25, the current 5-year forecast that was submitted in last November, because you can't go and tinker with the money. You can't just move it or spend more money to try to drive down how much money you have to return. So if you look, for fiscal '25, we have a $16 million reserve with a $20 million expenditure. You're right around 80%. If you look at the 5th year, and this is one of the things that one of the recommendations we had, was consider being at 25% threshold in the 5th year of a 5-year forecast. That allows districts time to make adjustments. It lets them determine what their levy strategies would particularly be, or if there are ways to shrink costs within the district, you could do that, because as you can see. What's that?
We're saving for an improvement. We have so many improvements that.
100%. I mean, we have spent, a beautiful presentation I want to put together in May based on what the BEST committee has talked about this year on how we can strategically go through and use our existing funds to really renovate this place very strategically and methodically. And we can still do some of those, because some of it did come from our PI reserves, which they can't touch. This is general fund. But we don't know if we can move money from this into the general fund beyond what we had already said we could do. But if you look the 5th year, we're at about 18%. The 4.3 divided by the 23.5 is about 18%. So in the 5th year, we are under that 25%, which is now a 30% threshold. But I want to show you what happens when we plug in $9.9 million going out of the general fund back to whomever, all right? So again, we were a solid $4 million to the good in year 5. All right, you can see, and this year's already done, so by next school year, our cash reserve is at 30%, okay? Do that division. The following year, all right, we are well below. We're like 18%, 15% that year, but they have not told us, okay, so now we're below. How do we get that money back up to the 30? They have not talked about what that looks like.
And healthcare goes up another 10% or whatever,
So
covers that.
essentially what we would have to do, you're giving money back to your tax base, your businesses, and your constituents. And what are we doing the very next year? We're asking for a levy. We're asking for it back to get us back to The 30%, and this 30% is an annual, it's an annual calculation. So it's not a one-time right now. It's every year you have to maintain the 30, so you're never allowed to go above, ever, not ever. And you can see what this does. Matt does his 3-year forecast. Look where we would be in the third year of that third-year forecast when he's doing that for next year. You know, it starts to become very problematic very, very quickly because you need the ask here. You absolutely need the money here. What if you don't get it? You end up here.
And we've already certified contracts over multiple years. And by the state going out and saying, well, you could, you know, you're going to give back $10 million. You know, in that third year, as Matt's showing, you know, we have a negative $1,038,000 balance right there in fiscal '28. What's a school supposed to do for those collective bargaining agreements that you've entered into, knowing that your forecast was strong at the time, and the school signed a 412 certificate certifying that, yes, we have the funds available to incur all of these costs. The state coming out and saying, we're changing up the game, you know, it doesn't work. You know,
What's the
you can't.
reason behind all this? I'm very curious.
Uh,
I mean,
to-
what is really
so-
the reason behind doing this? 'Cause
So
it-
privatized education.
Got it.
Crazy.
It's privatized education. We are a small suburban district. I have for 4 years stood up here, done a state report card analysis, and I compared us to every school district that borders us. We know we border 7 different school districts. And Tom mentioned for years, sitting in this seat, that one of the goals was not just to privatize education, but to consolidate the number of school districts in the state of Ohio. Hard to consolidate a rural district where,
Yeah.
you know, I grew up
Gotta
in,
go.
I graduated from Waverly High School in Pike County. There's only four districts in the entire county. You're not consolidating over a huge, vast area.
Yeah.
But there are 31, 32 districts in Cuyahoga County alone. All right? That becomes a little bit more problematic. And so school districts, similar to us, if we're not able to advocate and move the needle, from what I understand, what I was told today, there are a lot of members of the Senate, people in influential positions, like actually can make changes, are not real happy with what came out of the House. I don't think the governor overall is happy with it, but is telling people, I am not the person who can change this because it's not at my level. You contact your House of Representatives, then you need to contact your senators, and then once it gets to me, then that's when I can make decisions one way or another. So there's hope that you could get a veto out of this somewhere down the road by the governor. There's hope that maybe the Senate is going to come up with something a little bit more common sense, make this a 30% at the end of the 3-year forecast or the 5-year forecast. Make it only a one-time, not an annual. Talk about a better mechanism when you fall below to get the money back so you're not going back to your taxpayers. It is 100% to privatize education and to consolidate school districts. And some say this didn't exactly come out of left field. It certainly did for me. A positive, and I can't remember if I talked about this before, one of the things the governor had mentioned was that underutilized buildings should be offered up or would be required to be offered up to charter schools or parochial schools. They defined underutilized schools as 60% capacity or less. And GPD gave us the figure that we are about 320,000 square feet. All right. But if we went to the OFCC and they built a brand new building, they would put us in approximately 120,000 square foot building for the population we serve. Okay, that means, I did the wrong number there, 120 divided by 320 is 37.5%. If that were to go through, we would have to sell our district to a charter school. It doesn't matter how high achieving you are and how good you are with your money. That got taken out. We were notified today that that is no longer on the table. That has been removed. We don't have to worry about that for 2 more years. Okay? But that's what I was focused on. I wasn't worried about the fair school funding formula. I supported it. I know a lot of our districts, colleagues around the state of Ohio, they need that fair school funding formula to work for them. It's not a huge part of our overall budget, so that wasn't a big deal. It was the building capacity. Like, oh my goodness, like that we have no control over. Can't help that we were built, in 1938 to be essentially a career center for the workforce of Cuyahoga County. But then this came, and this got everybody's attention. And I don't think we're the canary in the coal mine, so to speak. We do everything, almost everything right. And our voters were very generous to say yes. And now the state wants to say no. We will not honor the will of the people. Even though I get it was a slight majority, it was still the will of the people. And now we're going to be faced with this, and every 2 years have to go back to the public for money in order to stay afloat.
But the thought could be that, schools are going to run into problems going out for so many levies, for levy fatigue in communities. So you're going to have communities that just get tired of seeing, new levies coming on, renewal levies, proposed bond issues. It could be a scenario where, schools aren't able to pass bond issues or renewal levies for existing money or even new levies. And they get to a point where they say to the state, let's change up, because of this, HB 96, let's change up school funding and do away with property taxes. And the state has, a one-size-fits-all for school districts. That's a concept without property taxes, which they could have been proposing, all this time. And schools will be in such a, their backs up against the wall, and they may be, at a point where they have to cut programs and whatnot, that a bad deal comes across and is agreed to, it's okay, and is agreed to as a result of all this, which, and again, the ultimate impact is the students out there, and you want to make it to where, programs aren't getting reduced, and curriculum isn't getting reduced, and transportation's not getting reduced, and special education's not getting, not getting reduced. There's so many just ripples as you throw the stone in the pond that, with this, it could be, kind of, 2 years from now, property taxes could be completely gone. And it's
Well,
just
Today, there was a news story today. The Citizens for Tax Reform are canvassing the state of Ohio to get an issue on the ballot that would get rid of property taxes completely.
Yeah, Senator Brunner proposed, George, do you remember what Senate bill it is? Senate Bill 91, 93? Senate Bill 93 was 100% in line with that. I don't think that's going to get any legs this time around, but it's a window into where a very influential senator who is aligned with his former colleague in the Senate, who's now the Speaker of the House, and what their plan is. Again, they've been playing the short game and the long game simultaneously for a very long time. And somebody once said, Jim Tressel once said, maybe a future governor, if it's not broke, break it, or somebody will break it for you. Yep. And we have not been breaking it enough. And this is what we've got. And so we will figure out solutions, but those solutions may look different than what the solutions look like today.
So it's a one-time rebate, right? But not changing your tax rate. So in the long run, you're going to pay more because every year you're paying the same, and then in 2 years you need more, and then 2 years you need more, and then 2 years you're getting another levy, right? So you're going to end up paying more for the taxpayers.
It could be you pay the rate that's out there, but you get a refund, and then you pay the rate that's out there, then you get a refund, and some years you don't. It's all weird.
But you wouldn't ask for a levy if you were positive, so you really wouldn't get a refund anymore.
Right. And how does it affect us? As Matt was saying, we've been working with the BEST committee on our long-term capital improvement, structure. We have no debt, which we'd be very proud for, that we're not, incurring interest payments on it. we've been exploring, how do we accomplish, all the needs in, an aging building? And what does that look like as far as a levy? There was some talk about a bond issue, some talk about a combo general fund PI. But at that time, about a month ago, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, our general fund was in great shape. And again, we have one of the lowest tax rates among all the schools in Cuyahoga County. So we were exploring, what does that, what are the scenarios? Bond issue, a combo general fund PI in and of itself. Now, everything has inverted, everything's flip-flopped to where no longer can we talk about anything else because the general fund is the main, focus that we have to divert everything to. And we know that there's a phase out of TPP. Inflation's going up with costs all across the board. So we can't, we couldn't go out to the public and chance a levy, like a bond issue, let's say, for example, for capital improvements, and lose the general fund, because you lose the general fund, you lose the whole district. So now the general fund goes back into focus, and capital improvements go to the wayside, but they can't, because you still have to fix everything that we have out there. But then if the state's passing, this draconian law that's saying, we're gonna make up a percentage, a cap. It was 25, now they're changing it to 30%. Now we have to operate under that, and we've seen how schools look when they operate at low cash balances, Garfield Heights. So now we have to operate there, and we can't use our funds, maybe we were next year for the roof, and maybe we were gonna pay it from the general fund. Now we can't, that option's not even there. Maybe we're gonna transfer from the general fund into PI to do the roof. It's not there, because the general fund will lose approximately $10 million potentially with this proposed law from the House that they're talking about. So just the impacts are tremendous, and it just flip-flops everything we've been working on for however many years leading up to this, as well as all the other school districts right now. They're all having the
Yeah,
same conversations.
every public school district's
right now.
in the same boat.
In the same boat. So we're all together. 86% of us are in the same boat. The ones under that, we're just having they're having these conversations every day because they're trying to lift it up. So, I'm not trying to throw Garfield Heights under the bus or anything, but just for this example, Garfield Heights is out there looking, how do we generate revenue? How do we keep all our programs? How do we build? But they're cutting, they're reducing, in some respects. So, where we were talking about building the district and what can we, accomplish and how can we, keep going forward with this proposed, law that's out there, it could flip-flop the mindset, not to build, but how do we survive, stay afloat, and what are we reducing just to,
Yeah, that's the other piece, is how do you reduce, because you saw our expenditures went up each year. How do you just keep it at $20 million? How do you drop it to $18 million when, there's a lot of, and I think we were pretty transparent with the BEST committee after we explored multiple options. We don't know what funding looks like in the future for the state of Ohio. And so we have to consider that. You can't just say, well, let's go get a bond. Well, how do you know public education is going to be around in 30 years to pay off that bond? We talked about that. It is Senate Bill 93, Senator Andrew Brenner. It is a bill to declare the General Assembly's intent to establish a new school financing system that provides a statewide per-pupil funding payment to public and chartered non-public schools based on a single statewide property tax and increased state sales tax. And then there is Section 1, A, B, C, and D. It's a single page. It is currently in Senate committee. It was introduced, now it's in Senate committee. I don't think it's going to pass the Senate necessarily, but this is the kind of thing that's coming, and it parallels what you just mentioned, Maria. So this may be what's coming.
Well, I guess,
Which I think was the backpack bill. That was the whole premise of the backpack bill.
Yeah.
We're going to fund kids with $1 amount, and they can go anywhere they want to go to school, anywhere, and that's how you're going to fund schools.
so I'm trying to understand the path, the math path here. So the
That's a good one.
yeah, so
Yeah, there is a one.
the property owners pay the property tax, and they're saying, people are complaining our property taxes are too high. But it's not like that's going to change, they're still gonna be charged that, but then it's gonna come into the school, what was allotted to us, but then we're gonna give percentage away to somebody else, and we don't even know where our money's
Who
going.
will then return it back to,
Maybe.
we think.
Yeah, so I'm trying to follow that math path, and it doesn't make any sense.
Right, so really, in short, exactly that. So we have, a carryover balance right now sitting in our bank account that, carries us over 5 years, and, we're planning future expenditures. What this law could do is, with money that's sitting in our bank account right now, the Budget Commission is gonna say, oh, you guys have too much of a carryover. You guys get no property tax, for next year. We're gonna take out $10 million of that. So we're surviving on just the money that we have. They're taking out, $10 million, from the Budget Commission to give refunds back. And then we're gonna drain our account for that $10 million that we didn't have. But it's to look at it in a different way, it's saying that, we have money in our bank account, but the state's saying you have to not use that money for any programs or, curriculum or foreign language or special education. You have to take that money out of your bank account, give it back as refunds to everybody in your community. That's what they're saying. So we have to take money from our bank account, $10 million, and give it back in refunds. And then we lose, all of the, plans and, needs that we had for that money, the roofing.
Wait, but it would go back to the taxpayers?
It would.
I thought originally you said it would go to the county.
Well, the county, and then in turn to the taxpayers.
And then they return it.
Right.
Well, how do
Ultimately,
we
it's
know
getting-
they're gonna return it?
Oh, that would-
we don't-
Hopefully,
we
there's
don't-
better accounting than chartered
Like,
and
what makes-
non-public schools have to account for.
Why does the state think that the county government
We're gonna have
is
Matt.
better stewards of the money than the school districts have been of our own money? I mean, that doesn't make any sense either.
I agree.
They're not gonna keep it, they're gonna give it back, they're gonna
So
issue
will they?
everybody a tax refund.
Well, I think you're missing the point, which is that the state doesn't really care about that. They just want to take the money away from
Okay.
school
They,
districts.
no, well, yeah, and they also want to provide property tax relief because everybody's complaining about high property taxes. They're just combining these two needs into one.
Yeah.
Oh, let's kill the public schools while we give people money back on their taxes. then maybe
And so when
they'll
the,
elect us,
so when
and
we have to
maybe
come
4
back
years-
for it, it's the greedy school district that has to come back for
Yep.
more money.
Right.
Right.
Which
And
every
they get to
district
say
in the
they
state
can
will
take
have to do.
And then the answer, this tax reform, the Citizens for Tax Reform, their answer was, well, don't tax people on their property tax. And then what was the answer to, the property tax, where it goes, what is it funding? How would you then take care of those, do those funds? And they said, well, just have to increase income tax or increase sales tax.
But you'll notice that Mr. that Matt did not say, Mr. Young did not say that they wanted to increase income tax. In the list of taxes that were going up, one of you two gentlemen said, did not have income tax in that list.
Well,
Nobody
this-
said anything. You're the first one to mention income
Well, that was
tax.
this was the Citizens for Tax Reform, that's what they were saying. Because when
Oh, okay.
they were posed
They
the
were going to
question,
talk about it,
okay, if you
because
get
at
rid
least-
of the property tax, and the property tax is funding schools and city, municipalities and, different government services, where do you get the money for that? And they said, well, I guess people will just have to have an increase in their income tax and there'll be an increase in sales tax. So it's gonna come from, if you take it out of one pocket, you gotta pull it
Yeah.
out of another
Right,
pocket.
right. You have
Yeah.
to pay it somewhere, and the question in my mind is equality. There has to be some level of equality, and the most regressive taxes are sales taxes, right? Because everybody has to buy stuff, so you have to pay sales tax. The taxes that are more fair are income taxes, because those who have the most pay the most. Percentage, they don't have to, they can afford to pay the most. So regressive taxes, like sales taxes, are very bad for the general citizen.
The Senate is also, a priority of the Senate is to also reduce income tax.
Yes, right. Oh, by the way, we forgot about that.
Yeah,
They're planning to reduce income tax at the same time.
yes. It becomes very, very problematic.
We're gonna have to start charging tariffs to every state that
Yeah.
So, Mr. Muccio, a couple of points. Firstly, thank you and Mr. Young for the outstanding work you've done over the last week, getting the word out and contacting our legislators to let our voice be heard. I think it's really, really important. And as time goes on, to me, I think our ability to effectively communicate what in some eyes might be some complex issues, I think is going to become really critical. So thank you to you both. I also wanted to clarify, my understanding is that this proposal, HB 96, this cap on revenues, it only applies to school districts. It does not apply to other state government municipalities, right? No cities, no towns, no villages. Am I
That's correct. That's correct.
So
It's just schools.
It seems to be yet another example of public schools being isolated, being called out or cast as being the victims to bear the cost of this tax assault on public schools, public education. That's just my speak. I've been doing this job for 9 years now, or almost 9 years, and I'm just astounded. I've never seen anything this shocking.
The last time you had something like this was Senate Bill 5, which I believe was around 2009. And that went after public schools as well, but they felt they made the mistake of including your police and your fire, your EMS folks. They got all lumped into this public service, and the state voted against it. All right. And so they broke that up, and a lot of things still went into place in other bills over the years. And now they're coming back again at us, but they've left police and fire and EMS, villages, other forms of government out of the conversation, and are just isolating public education. And it's at the federal level. This is at least that it's very consistent with the privatized movement at the federal level. But we've been out in front of the feds on this, right? This has been a movement that's been going on in Ohio for a while. Yeah. This isn't new. This is more than a decade old. It's just all their stars are aligned at this point.
So I have one more item for Mr. Muccio, probably in his wheelhouse, and that is I'd attended the legislative liaison Zoom call on, as it happens, March 31st, the day before this law was issued. And one of the takeaways was that my understanding is that the Ohio Auditor's Office is going to begin an expansion of its, I guess, fairly longstanding financial health indicators metrics to public schools. And if I'm correct, I believe that becomes part of their assessments as of May 1st of this year. And one of the takeaways from that conversation was that there appears to be a divide in terms of the logic, because apparently the auditor's office awards value and ascribes value to municipalities and potentially school districts that carry larger cash balances, both in an absolute and a relative sense, versus those that do not. And yet that seemingly contradicts the spirit, if you want to call it that, and intent of this HB 96 initiative to cap school general fund, quote unquote, surpluses.
Absolutely.
Have you heard about this, and do you read it the same way that the OSBA's experts were discussing it?
Yes, and we have the financial health indicators over here by the Auditor of State's office, as they are, as you're talking about, developing guidelines for identifying fiscal practices and budgetary conditions for schools that could be in fiscal watch, emergency, caution. So yeah, absolutely. Cash balance is among those that they look at, which would be an item that indicates a healthier school district. But yeah, this number 8, percentage of general fund revenues that exceed general fund expenditures. So everything in here makes sense if we were to go through all of the indicators that they have. But yeah, cash balance does, so it's a direct contradiction to what the House is proposing that they have in here. So it's.
And that was the point of the conversation. There were a lot of takeaways, some really important developments I thought that the OSBA staff laid out. But one of them was this glaring contradiction between what, as I understand, has been already implemented by the auditor's office effective May 1st. And this parallel budget bill that has a completely, wholly contradictory language, that in one sense you're punished, and on the other hand, you're not punished, you're actually rewarded for sound financial performance.
Yes, I agree.
So, thank you. I just wanted to bring that out and get that onto the record, because I think that's part of this assault on public education that unfortunately we're experiencing.
Right, and the scenario that Matt was running on the forecast when he was plugging in those numbers, if we see a deficit in fiscal '28, that means we would have to have, and we're collecting all of our levies at 100%, in that forecast. So if the state takes away $10 million next year in fiscal, 26, let's say, for example, we would almost have to put a levy on to collect in full 27, because you can't wait to 28. So we would have to start looking at it before 27, and we're either putting it on in 25 to make sure you have it, or
Yeah.
26 at the latest.
Yeah, this
which is
fall
next year.
or next spring.
Imagine that. And then, the size of what that levy would look like, and would it have any PI attached to general fund or just be all general fund? We know we're, again, all those competing factors. We have the phase out of TPP, we have inflation hitting us, capital improvements that we have. So by them, enacting this proposed House law, it accelerates, us going on the ballot, like Matt was saying, and puts us among all the other school districts that are going to be in the same scenario, operating under that 30%, and then everybody's going to be in the same boat with what they have. But we're different because we have the phase out of TPP, which a lot of schools don't. So we're even in a less favorable position, because schools have at least some stable balance from what they're getting from the state, and they don't have revenue being taken away.
Do they want us to tap into our investment money? Is that what they want us to do?
Well,
I don't know if they were
Is there-
considering
or
that.
should
It's
we-
just going to have to
Or
happen.
should we avoid by just moving money into the general fund from our savings, so that they can't impose this penalty, like take the money?
It's still cash, no matter where it is.
Okay.
It doesn't really
right.
make a difference,
No,
right?
yeah.
But do they want us to go into our reserves? Is that what they want us to do?
Yes.
They want you
Yes.
to have
Yes.
it,
Okay.
yeah.
They want our reserves to get down from 98% to under 30%.
Okay.
But you don't just stay at 30% through the year. There are
Oh,
lows
God.
and highs. So
And
we
look
may
at
get
what-
really low.
And look at what the stock market's doing right now.
Right. Right. And then that goes to, every treasurer's fear of cash balance, or cash flow. So you may not have enough cash at certain times of the year to make payroll. So then you're judging and mapping out and planning how you pay bills. So if we have to pay, the Hillside project, $400,000, or the fire alarm system, which is $600,000, we have to plan that around, peaks and valleys of when we have cash. So we couldn't pay in a valley, all of that, because we wouldn't have money set up for payroll. And we can't go out and email everybody on a Monday, we don't have, the funds available to make payroll, sorry. We can't postpone it for a week because people have their mortgages, they have their car payments. You can't go to a bank.
But you
and
did say we could tap into the Star Ohio Fund.
That's part of our cash.
Yeah,
It's
right,
capped.
right.
That's our cash.
Yeah, we would lose all that. So,
Yeah, it would be
and
gone.
think if we're at 20, let's say we're at 20%, at some, December, let's say, December in the future. And if we have large bills coming from the ESC, large bills coming from, let's say hypothetically the fire alarm and the Hillside all at the same time, come and say, all right, we're ready to get paid, we did all our work. And then, we have to pay them. Then we're looking at, well, we have to make payroll on these dates. We have to hold the money back. We have to wait till we get property taxes from the county, into the future. We're not going to do that, but let's say, a whole year goes by and we're in 27 or something like that. You can't go to like Huntington Bank or any bank out there and say, uh-oh, I misjudged this. We don't have any cash. We can't make payroll. We have to go get a loan. Bank can't give you like, a loan that quickly. And then if you had to go to a bank and get a loan, you're paying interest on that at a high rate. So just the planning in and of itself with capital projects is just gonna be a monumental task for cash flow, because again, you can't, the priority has gotta be payroll. So that's priority number one, everything else falls by the wayside. And then you're gonna have to effectively manage all your projects, so it's, project management, we talk about that a lot, actually. And then it's saying, well, this is like cash flow project management, like what you can and can't spend at certain times during the year, to, say where you're at. And that gets kind of scary because, these projects, as we're looking at it, you have to plan months in advance to even have these companies be ready to go, for certain times. So there's just a lot of planning that goes into these scenarios that I'm not quite sure, the people down in Columbus,
Don't care.
see.
Yeah, I know we've been talking about this for a while, but I guess I would just emphasize that having a healthy cash balance is not for cash is king. You want a healthy amount of cash for the short-term things that you just outlined, Mr. Muccio, but also to give you flexibility. It also helps you plan for the long term. It helps you weather things like, the COVID pandemic or a potential recession that may or may not be coming, depending on the day or the hour. That is why we need to have a healthy cash balance. It is actually frightening that they either don't understand it, and if they don't understand it, I would invite them to our meeting in May when we're gonna go through our 5-year forecast and they can understand that, or they're willfully choosing to hold us to a different standard than any private business would hold themselves to.
And we had a panic.
And
You're
we're-
exactly right.
yeah.
With the fire alarm system. That
Yes.
went down, and we had people walking around doing, fire watch in person, because we were working on urgent necessity and getting everything going for that. We couldn't operate without having that either fire watch or fire alarm system. But without a carryover balance, I mean, if that goes down, you can't, the budget commission's just gonna, stop you with a cap because
Yeah.
of this draconian law. And then we're like, wait a sec, that cash balance, like you're articulating, gets you through those rough times. And we
Right.
wouldn't have it. So it just, it doesn't make sense to me.
Yep.
Well put, Mrs. Prowse.
I think that's all for my section.
Oh, is that all?
You sure you don't have anything else you want to throw in there, Mr. Muccio?
Oh, that's right, we were in section 7, weren't we? Well, moving on to section 8, superintendent's business.
2 items on the consent agenda for consideration, 8A and 9A.
Entertain a motion for those 2 items, please.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Dobbins.
Second.
I'm sorry, I couldn't, Ms. Proust, okay. Any discussion?
Really quick here. So the first item requires us to adopt a model emergency action plan for the use of automated external that's a long word, defibrillators, AEDs. That was part of House Bill 47 from the 135th General Assembly. Went into effect back in October. This model action plan discusses how to use an AED, protocols for infants and children and adults, as well as requirements to practice and maintain the AEDs, the locations. We're going to be adding an additional AED to our press box outside, because we've never had something outside accessible except on our trainers. But if you've got any type of an event at your stadium, an outside group coming in and they're renting your facility to have a youth soccer practice, you need to have those AEDs available should a person need that. Additional requirements for designated persons within the building, at your school, location, organization who can coordinate and supervise these. And we have to share that action plan for AEDs with local emergency management services in advance of the medical emergency. So thanks to Mr. Burek for getting this on the agenda. The state put it together. Why break from what the state is suggesting unless it's a funding formula? And then 9A is the substitute teacher list, of which there are no updates to that list. Okay, so those are the 2 items.
Any further questions or discussions? Hearing none, treasurer, please call it.
Mr. Dobbins.
Aye.
Ms. Prowse.
Aye.
Mrs. Etter.
Aye.
Mrs. Decker.
Aye.
Mr. Souchaki.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Superintendent comments section.
Yeah, just a few more things to add. So the the budget bill did increase funding to Ohio public schools by $220 million. However, they gave the voucher program an additional $500 million. All right, so more than double went to the voucher program, then increased for public schools. It's an increase, and we're grateful for the increase, but it didn't keep up with inflation. So that adds to the difficulties. In addition, on March 31st, there was a notification from the U.S., what's left of the U.S. Department of Education. Secretary Linda McMahon sent out a Dear Colleague letter regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion, definitions, interpretations, and then requirements for state educational associations to ensure that DEI was being addressed with their constituents, and that nothing that their constituents were doing was in violation of the executive order in the Dear Colleague letter. So notification came out from the Ohio Department of Education yesterday that requires them to notify their constituents, which we are a constituent, about our requirement to certify. I have to certify with my signature. So I am personally responsible for, to my signature, my license, and then federal funding, that we are going to be in compliance with the federal mandate for diversity, equity, and inclusion practices, policies, processes, procedures, per that particular notification, and specifically Title VI. We, where is it here? I got too many sheets of paper. We've got a couple legal updates on that. We know that on April 7th, the National Education Association filed an emergency motion, U.S. District Court of New Hampshire, for a temporary restraining order blocking the U.S. Department of Education compliance certification. We're supposed to get a decision by 4 o'clock tomorrow. There's also a challenge in the state of New York. The New York State Education Association also issued a letter to the U.S. Department of Education stating that it will not respond to the request for certification. So I guess we'll find out what happens in New York. That will determine what's going to happen around the country. I got a notification today from Neola, which, as you know, board docs, our policies are all through Neola. Neola sent a further update regarding this certification process, and what they have said is this, and I think it's important to note. It says, to further assist clients, Neola has conducted a search of its policy templates for references to diversity, equity, or inclusion, just the words. It says, while such references can be found in 17 policy templates, none of these policies or their references conflict with the federal mandate, and in fact are appropriate use of the terms. In many cases, the terms are used in a different context rather than what is the focus of the U.S. Department of Education's reminder and certification. So from Neola's perspective, none of these policies advocate or require disparate or preferential treatment based on protected classes. So that comes with an asterisk. As long as we have not, and this is the importance, and I've talked to our attorneys about this, and they said they provide templates, and you have local decision to change anything that you want in those. And I said, wait. We are only going to change what we are permitted to change through options within the policies. We are not going to change the language because your multiple legal teams have put these together. And so as long as we have not gone in and changed language on our own accord, then all of our board policies are in compliance. It is now going through and ensuring that our student handbook, which 2 years ago, what did we do? Aligned it with the Neola policy handbook. So we should be aligned in our handbook, but we will check that. Our staff handbook, we will check that. Our one plan that we submitted to the state for funding, we have to check that. Anything that we have documented, we have to ensure that we are in compliance with the feds. And so I've been advised to hold off on signing this until the last possible moment, just in case there's any pending legal action that actually takes hold. That has to be submitted by the end of the day on Friday, the 18th of April. So it's a very quick you notice a lot of quick turnarounds here. That proposed budget bill came out, substitute bill came out on April 1st, and they voted on it today. So it's already done. So if you wanted to contact your House of Rep, it's too late now. It's now moving on to the Senate, who's taking a 2-week recess for spring break. So you're not going to be able to contact them in the next 2 weeks. And then after that, they have a jam-packed schedule, and that will pick up at the end of April. So, but that's on the national and the federal front with respect to that. But the Wizard of Oz was amazing. 3 shows, so many kids involved, coming off the heels of Willy Wonka Kids, in which they were 2 amazing shows with so many kids involved. Just to see, that's what you call a program. We're not putting on a musical. We're building a program. And then you see somebody like Mr. Holsworth, whose children were involved in the Willy Wonka Kids, being so moved by the power of what they did at the elementary school, and then you see what happens then when it translates to the high school, that wants to donate the gift of music to our music programs, right? And so those advisors and those students and the parents and the volunteers, we had a nice article about the people behind the scenes, the hard work, the construction they did. It's just great to see it come together. And it was 3 packed shows. They were so creative, did an amazing job. So I just wanted to give a quick shout out to them. We're fully into the 4th quarter. Spring break is next week. We're like 50-something days until graduation. That counts weekends. The school year is quickly coming to an end. All of our English language arts tests occurred this week. The SAT was today. So we are effectively halfway through state testing. When we come back from spring break, we'll take a week break from testing, and then we'll pick up science, social studies, and mathematics. And then we go into AP testing. So by the time all that's over, it's senior projects and end of the year celebrations. So we're getting there. And I just can't tell you how proud I am of our students and our staff, and how grateful I am for their families and the community that supports them.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to section 11 then, board policy and bylaw review. We have an update to the release time for religious instruction during the school day item. I believe there's been yet another update to that.
So with the substitute House bill that came out last week on April 1st, very strategically timed, right, on April Fool's Day. I just do want to let you know that within that, as predicted, there is a change to the minimum requirement. It's not law, so I recommend we just go ahead and go with what we have decided, and that is the minimum. But that new minimum will be 1 hour per week required if it passes. So if we're saying we're restricting it to 30 minutes, which is that lunch over here and lunch/recess over there, if a parent opted, we would have, and they wanted to participate, that would 2 times a week would add up to an hour every week of the school year. It would be required by law, and that would be the minimum. So we knew that was coming. We knew it was coming, and that is their version of it. The Senate may change it. The Senate may say no, or they may double it. But right now, it's a minimum of 1 hour, a maximum of 2 per week. So they did put some parameters on it. So that's just to give you a little bit of an idea of that one. Now, 12A, you'll see it's a revised 2025 Special Education Model Policies and Procedures. We had to pass that resolution, but then some modifications were made after the fact. We got notified by Neola. Do you remember what the changes were?
There's 4 changes where Ohio's model policies were not in alignment with federal policy. So they gave us a guidance, and districts are now readopting this with excluding those 4 areas that were in conflict. So they haven't changed the document at this point. The document still reads as it was written, because it took them a while to develop that in the first place. But again, it says that you should not follow those 4 specific areas.
Yeah, so you have two items there on the consent agenda for the board.
We're not voting on these separately?
You don't have to. You can do it as a consent agenda, or you can individually.
Right.
I thought they were individual because they were,
But then it says the consent agenda, so that's what.
But there's not, a simple motion says that we can
Simple
just,
motion says you can do them individually.
we can do them individually.
Absolutely.
That motion can be done anytime until the vote is taken, basically. So if you would like to separate them into separate issues,
I would.
okay, and we'll take them one at a time. Okay, any other discussion? All right, so starting with the first item that we need to vote on, which would be the release time for religious instruction, as it originally was, which is the 1 hour per year? per
No,
school
this
year?
is 30 minutes
30 minutes, I'm sorry.
once per year.
30 minutes
One
once per
session,
year.
one 30-minute session per year.
Okay, and that is the current,
That is what we are currently permitted to do
Required.
unless, that is the minimum we are permitted to choose as part of this required policy.
Required, yeah.
right,
Yes,
right, until.
until
that-
something else changes
something
that says
changes.
otherwise.
Right. So the first vote is for that item. This is the third reading. We've talked about it quite a bit. Release time for religious instruction. May I have a motion for that item?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Dobbins,
Second.
second by Ms. Prowse. We do have, the motion can go forward then. Realize if it was moved, if there was no motion or second, it would just be dropped, and we wouldn't vote at all. So we do have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Treasurer, please call the roll.
Mr. Dobbins.
Aye.
Ms. Prowse.
Aye.
Mrs. Etter.
Nay.
Mrs. Decker.
Aye.
Mr. Souchaki.
Aye, motion passes 4-1. That is for the current version of that requirement. The second item, the special education model, the revised special education model policies and procedures. Entertain a motion for that one.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Decker.
Second.
Second by Mr. Dobbins. Any discussion? Hearing none, Treasurer, please call the roll.
Mrs. Decker.
Aye.
Mr. Dobbins.
Aye.
Mrs. Etter.
Aye.
Ms. Prowse.
Aye.
Mr. Souchaki.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Moving on to section 14, board discussion and comments. Committee reports, anyone?
As I said earlier, I had a chance to attend the monthly Legislative Liaison Network meeting that is sponsored by the OSBA. It was a very informative session. It was on Monday, the 31st. They hold those the last Monday of every month. And I've shared with you, there's a lot of other developments that were discussed, and I think Mr. Smuccio and Young probably touched upon some of the more important things that the OSBA meeting also covered. I'll pass with that.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Nothing from the Career Center this week, so moving on to section 15. Anybody have any future agenda items? Section 16, informational. Should be noted, board members receive their agendas several days prior to the meeting, and thus they have had time to study and ask questions and so on. Upcoming regular meetings, all here in the Monterey Media Center, PDR room. April 23rd at 7, May 14th at 6 at the work session, and May 28th at 7. At this point, I would like to motion that the board adjourn to executive session pursuant to ORC 121.22G1 to consider employment, appointment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official. We are not going to have a conference with the attorney, so G3 is, even though it's in the agenda, we are not voting on that item. I've made the motion. Can we have a second, please?
Second.
Okay. I heard one, and I saw a hand from the other, so I guess we'll give it to Mrs. Decker because her hand went up faster than Mr. Dobbins made his statement. Treasurer, if there's no further discussion, Treasurer, please call the roll.
Mr. Souchaki.
Aye.
Mrs. Decker.
Aye.
Mr. Dobbins.
Aye.
Mrs. Etter.
Aye.
Ms. Prowse.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. We are adjourning into executive session at 7:24 p.m. No action will be taken when we reconvene.